Okay,
I
let's start.
thought that only not only Hebrew but Akkadian too.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can see the page.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about chapter 28, which is talking about the clothes of the Kohen Gadol, also the clothes of all the Kohanim. And here I'm showing you that all the words that I've colored, many colors here, all appear at the beginning of the chapter. Chiastically, they always appear at the bottom. But here we'll see something amazing that especially I want to talk about the pink word. And the pink words are lechavod u'liftifaret, for honor and for beauty. And here you can see it's written quite at the beginning, yeah? And here you can see especially all the words talking about for honor and for beauty. And at the bottom, it'll be written right at the beginning, because one of the clothes is not for beauty and for honor. It's for another reason. It's for tzniut. It's for, how would you say tzniut in English?
Modesty.
Honesty. And the michnasayim, the trousers, like we say in English, or the pants, like the Americans say, is after that. So it's not for honor. All the rest is for honor and for beauty. That's the only one not. But of course, all the clothes, and I won't go into a lot of commentary is written about what do the clothes do to a person. It's like saying the clothes doesn't do anything to a person, but you know, a policeman without his clothes, he's not a policeman. He is a policeman, but you can't see he's a policeman, and you got no dignity to him if he doesn't have his clothes. Exactly the same here, exactly the same. It's very similar, that also the clothes here give honor, and more so. The Kohanim can't work without their clothes. And when they are without their clothes, they're not allowed to work in the Bet Mikdash. That means, of course, the clothes don't make the person, but the clothes make out the figure, who he is. I gave an example of a policeman, but of course it's the king. Without the crown, you don't notice he's a king until he has the crown. So then you have more dignity, you have more awe, you have more thing, and so on and so on. Another thing is the word in brown, melitiv. Only when they put on the clothes, they are full, they're complete, they can work. And the word lemale. So all these words, I won't go into it, but each word has got a significance of what the clothes do. Okay, afterwards are written the items of the clothes. Let me make it a bit bigger now. Okay, you can see it bigger. There are all kinds of clothes, and there should be here 8 clothes. We'll soon talk about that there's no 8 clothes. There's only written here, Choshen, Ephod, Me'il, Ktonet, Tashbetz, Mitznefet, Avnet. It's only 6. I'll soon talk about where the other 2. Okay, one more thing that I want to talk about this page before we'll go to the next page is the main 2 clothes. The first cloth, which is perhaps the most significant clothing, it's not exactly a cloth, but it's actually we call it, what do you call it? A fod, which is a plate with all the stones. The plate, which is, it's not exactly a cloth, but it's like a protecting thing, and it's all the 12 stones of Am Yisrael. And of course, if you except the beginning, which is written in red, ephod, which is only the introduction, afterwards you'll see the word ephod will be written how many times? You can guess how many times?
7.
Why 7? All 7, all this time 12, because it's talking about the 12 tribes, 12 stones. Okay, so not, usually you're right, but this time it's 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 times. Okay, the second cloth, which is really a cloth, is the ephod, what? No,
Me'il?
the me'il is not so important. No, the me'il is two words. Is actually the choshen. Sorry, you've got the choshen and the ephod. Okay, you've got the ephod. Sorry, the word ephod is actually the clothing which is holding the choshen. I mixed up. The ephod is the actually the how would you call it? The pinny? It's not a penny. It's like
I just looked it up in Robert Alter's translation.
and what
So
do they
in the Robert Alter, anyway, he's very good. So he says ephod, and then in the note he says we would call it an apron.
an apron. Oh, that was a little thing, an apron.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, this
Seymour?
apron, this apron is more like in the army, and there are many pictures of it, that in the army soldiers use the ephod. And by the way, in modern Hebrew today in our army, in the IDF, you call what the soldiers
Ephod
have,
magen.
all their ammunition, you call it ephod. And it's definitely a good word for it, because it means you carry all the important stuff on it. And the important stuff is, of course, for the Cohen Gadol, is talking about the plate that has 12 stones. Okay, but the two important things are the ephod, which is the apron, on top of everything else, on top of the coat, the me'il, and on top of everything else. And on top, and the most important thing is, of course, the choshen, that you have the all the 12 stones. Okay, I'll soon talk about it. In the middle, between the two, you've got something in blue. I wrote it in blue. It should be in gold. But I didn't have gold. I could put yellow. Mishbetzot zahav sharsherot. You have always a sharsheret which are binding the ephod, the choshen to the ephod, the choshen to the ephod, the plate to the how do you call it?
Apron.
Apron, to the apron. Okay, so these are the two important things I want to say. Of course, the me'il is also, but it's at the bottom, more at the bottom. And another part is the tzitz. But I'll soon talk about these two, because these two are the main part. And look how many verses are written about the apron, and look how many verses are written about the plate, which has the 12 stones. The apron is much less, and the tzitz, which is from gold, and it's like a crown, we'll soon talk about it. And I said that two clothes which are missing here at the bottom. We'll talk about it now, the next page. Okay. If anybody wants to say something, you can interrupt. No thing. Victor, are you here? Okay.
He is here.
I was just
I
going to
can
say,
see.
another famous place where someone is described as wearing an ephod. I was looking up Shmuel Bet,
Very good.
Perek Vav,
Very good.
Pasuk Yudalid, where David
is
is
good.
wearing
When he's dancing in front of the Aaron, and of course his wife Michal Bat Shaul is criticizing how you're dancing with the thing, but he's only got a ephod. That means
right, only an ephod.
Only a
Bli Michnasayim.
No, I don't say without being. Okay, but it means he didn't have the jewels, he didn't have his crown, and he really looked like a normal person, and that's what ridiculed Michal. In another opportunity, we'll talk about what Michal was behaving. 3 times in that chapter, by the way, it's written Michal Bat Shaul. Why do we how many other Michals we know? It means she's behaving the whole time like Shaul.
Bat Melech.
What? Bat Melech, more than Bat Melech, she's also more superior. Okay, and that's why David actually divorced her. She didn't have at the end of that chapter any children. It's not because she was punished, it could be, but it's because David didn't want to come with her anymore, but she didn't want to be with her. Okay, we'll talk about that in another exchange.
Okay.
Here I'm going to talk about another interesting thing. And I wrote here in green that actually there are all kinds of clothes, especially in Judaism. Okay, we're coming into Purim. Of course, also Mordechai had beautiful clothes and he was dressed like a Cohen or like a king. But here I want to say, Am Israel, here I wrote in blue, Am Israel has one important clothing, which is a tzitzit. Aha, interesting, a tzitzit. I'll soon talk about that the more you become holy, you wear more. Now here is a midrash which is not known, but the Kohanim that go out and burn the sacrifices that weren't finished on the altar go outside michutz lamachane, outside the temple and outside
Camp,
sorry,
the camp.
the camp, and they have to have at least 2 clothes out of the 4. The normal Kohanim have 4 clothes, but when they go out to burn, they have to have the michnasaim and the chulza and the ktonet. So 2 clothes. The Midrash talks about that in the Gemara. Then it's higher. The higher you go, it goes from 1 clothes to 2 clothes, then to 4 clothes. The rest of the Kohanim, when they worship Hashem inside the tabernacle, they have already 4. Of course, the Kohen Gadol, which is more highly and he's more holy, has 8. So you can see the more holy you have double the amount of clothes. Okay, I don't know anybody else that has 16, but you can see from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. Interesting. So that's one thing that I showed here. That's why the more holy you are, the more clothes you have. The second thing I want to talk about before I go into the 2 clothing that I was talking about is at the bottom. It's not here. Okay, we'll talk about it soon. The 2 clothes that I said that so much is written about them and many verses is the apron and the plate. Now look how there's a lot of verses about the apron, and exactly the middle one, the middle verse is written here, an interesting blue verse. Velakachta, you take the 2 stones. Have a look on the apron itself. There's 2 stones, and the 2 stones are, by the way, on the shoulders. Avnei Shoam upitachta alehem shemot bnei Israel. Now here, on top of the shoulders, there's on top of the apron, the 2 shoulders have 1 stone here, 1 stone here. Engraved on those 2 stones, there's 6 and 6. We'll soon talk about 6 and 6, 6 tribes here and 6 tribes here. Why do I say that's interesting? Because it's the middle verse. Also, the next clothing, I said it's not exactly a clothing, it's a plate. Also, there's so many verses here. The middle one is also talking about stones. Can you see? This clothing is talking about stones, and this clothing is talking about stones. Now, always when it's the middle verse, it's saying it's the most important thing. Be'avanim tiena al shemot bnei Israel, and the stones, and here we're talking about the 12 stones, and they are on the names of Bnei Israel, and they're again engraved. So you can see, again, I wrote here on the left here, on the right here, I wrote here, the middle verse is talking about the names of Israel. And also here, the middle verse is talking about the names of Israel, meaning that all what the Cohen, Aaron, the Cohen Gadol is doing is always, he's not doing it because he's holy, because he's representing Am Israel. By the way, I won't open this discussion, but there are 2 people who are the head of Am Israel. Moshe is a representative of Hashem, and Aharon is a representative of Israel, and they come always together. I talked about it last week, that actually the Aron, the Ark, which is in Kodesh HaKadoshim, has got 2 parts. One part is the laws for us, And one part is from gold, pure gold on top, which represents not the laws of us, but it represents Akadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, Hashem, you can't represent it, but the wisdom, the glory comes between the two. So here you've got again two things which are combined together. Also, these two are combined together, which means always Aaron and Moshe, or the 12 tribes, are part and parcel of Am Yisrael. Okay, so that's interesting of itself. You'll soon see that I'll go into it a bit more deeper in the next page. Now here I want to say something amazing. There's a lot of parallels between the clothes and between the clothes and between the vessels that we talked about last week. Last week we talked about the ark, we talked about the shulchan, we talked about the menorah, and all these vessels very similar. The clothing are very similar. Of course, we talked about, for instance, the menorah, which is made from pure gold. Also, the top of the ark. You know, also here you can see the tzitz. The tzitz, which is on top of his crown, it's like a crown of the Cohen Gadol, has also from pure gold, and it's written the Kodesh LaHashem. I'll soon talk about that. So here I can show you there are many other parallels between them. One of the parallels is that the stones, the what's it called, the ephod. Ephod is a square with 12 stones, and it's written that it's exactly square. That means the diameter is exactly the same size of the length, which is very similar to the mizbeach, to the altar, which also has to be exactly square and not how do you say amalben, Avi?
Rectangular.
Sorry?
Rectangular.
Rectangular. It's not a rectangular. It has to be square. You're perfectly right. It has to be square.
By the way, you said the ephod, but I think you meant choshen with the stones.
You're perfectly right. The choshen has to be square. Of course, the ephod is the apron. Of course, we're talking about the plate has to be exactly square, and it's resembling perhaps the 12 stones. Also, the altar is many times mentioned made from 12 stones. It doesn't have to be made from 12 stones, but we know from Eliyahu on Har HaKarmel, when he built the altar, he built it from 12 stones. And there are other places that we know that it's 12 stones. Another thing that I want to say is, here, this choshen, this plate, doesn't move and doesn't bounce on top of the apron. Which is very similar to also that you're not allowed to take, you're not allowed to move the rods out of the ark. It's exactly the same in Isur. You're not allowed here, you're forbidden to take out from only from one vessel. You're not allowed to take out the rods from the ark. You're not allowed to move when he's wearing the apron and he's got on top of it the plate has to be tied with blue strings, and it has to be tied well so it won't move and won't dangle over. So it's exactly the same, and here you've got, I showed the parallel between them. Okay, there's
That's a question.
Yes, definitely. Go, shoot.
We talk here about rods for the Aron, for the ark.
Yes.
And in many pictures that I see on sarcophaguses and in other places, I don't remember where, the Aron has wheels. Nobody's talking about wheels over here.
No.
Can you tell us anything about that?
Interesting. Where have you seen it, wheels? In the tabernacle, there wasn't any wheels. I don't know where you've seen pictures. That's interesting. The only place they took it on wheels is when David brought it the first time into David. He did two sins, not one, two sins. One, he brought it on a cart, exactly like the Philistines. Secondly, the ones who carried it, I won't go into that chapter. It's the same chapter you were talking about before, Elaine. Chapter 6 then in Shmuel Bet is talking about that he used people which are called Bnei Aminadav. Uzzah wasn't a Cohen. How dare him take the Aaron? Who should take the Aaron? Or Leviim or Kohanim. And suddenly Bnei Aminadav are people from Yehuda. Oh, that's another thing. Okay, we won't get that. But the cart is not forbidden completely. The second time in that chapter that he brings after 3 months, again the ark, he brings it the right way. He brings it by Leviim, and they carry it on their shoulder. Okay, so Avi, I don't know where you've seen the pictures, but it's the sin. Whoever carried it on a cart was the Philistines when they brought it back from captivity, and David when he brought it the first time to Ir David. Okay, I want to go into the next part. That all the verses that I show on this apron, and for instance, I'm showing you, for instance, Choshev. That means it's a work of art which is being thought of. Maaseh Choshev, I would say something which has been really delicately being thought of, and so on. Exactly the same you've got also in the second part, Choshev, and all the words which are written in the first part, I said Shemot, Avnei Shoam, and so on, Avnei Zikaron. All this is written in the second part also. So there's a lot of parallels between this part, and I'm talking about the apron, and what's on top of the apron. And again, I said that's very similar to the ark inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, because the ark inside the Kodesh HaKodashim has got 2 parts, and we talked about it last week. The bottom part, which I would say is like a vessel to contain something inside it, it's less important. It's important, but it's less important. That's why it's not pure gold. It's gold with wood, and inside it is the Torah and the broken and the not broken Luchot Habrit, which were given in Sinai, and the top part, which is more holy. So again, here you've got also like a vessel, which is the apron, and the more important part is the plate, which has the 12 stones. But it's very similar, and I wrote here in the note here on the side on the left that it's very similar to the 2 parts. Again, there's a lot of parallels between the vessels and the clothes, which actually is trying to say, and we'll see it in the book of Vayikra, when we get to the book of Vayikra, that one of the vessels, I say it in converted commas, one of the vessels of the tabernacle is the Kohanim itself. They are part of the tabernacle. How do I know it's part of the tabernacle? Because when you sprinkle on the Kohanim, you sprinkle on 3 corners of their ears, their thumbs, and the thumb on the toe, the big toe. Where's the 4th place? Always you have to sprinkle on 4 places. So you got 1, 2, and on the toe at the bottom. I won't lift up my toe, but believe me, I've got a toe. And the 4th place is on the Mizbeach. It's like the Kohanim are like vessels of the tabernacle. They're like vessels of the Mizbeach. That's a whole thing that we'll talk about in Sefer Vayikra. They are part and parcel of God's tabernacle. So that's interesting. So that's why these clothes are not only clothes which are resembling the vessels, the Kohanim themselves are vessels. Okay, here I'm going to go to something interesting, and I'm going to go to the next page. And the next page is something that I was very excited when I found it. 2 things that I found. One thing is, at the beginning I said, at the beginning of the chapter, I said there's only 6 vessels or 6 clothes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Excuse me, where's 7 and 8? Okay, they're written only at the bottom. Why they are written only at the bottom? You can see, he should have, if the Torah is already mentioning what are these 8 clothes, why didn't they say it at the beginning, like the rest of the clothes, right? All the 8. Here I'm going to give one explanation for the 7th cloth, and then I'm going to give an explanation for the 8th cloth. Okay, which 2 are missing? The choshen, therefore, the me'il, the ktonet, and ktonet tashbetz, which means the shirt. Mitznefet is the hat. The avnet is it's like a chagura. What's a chagura?
Belt.
Belt. It's like a belt. It's not exactly a belt. It goes round and round and round. So why this other 2 are not written? So I've already said it quite at the beginning. All of these 8 clothes or part of the 8 clothes are lechavod uletif'aret, and I use these 2 words, which means they're respectable and they're for holiness and therefore to make beauty. And of course, the Cohen Gadol looked like a king. By the way, if I'm already saying he's like a king, he's the only person that doesn't bow down to the king. There are actually 2 kings in Am Yisrael. There's the king, let's say David HaMelech, and there's the Kohen HaGadol. Now, one doesn't have to bow down to the other. Why are there 2 kings and not 1 king? Because Hashem wants to tell them, you are not a king and you are not a king, because both of you are deputies of the king. Who's the main king? Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Kohen has got like a crown on himself, and he's got beautiful clothes. The king himself has a crown. They don't have to bow down. At least Beit David doesn't have to bow down to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol doesn't have to bow down. There's a Mishnah about that. They don't bow down, but there are actually 2 different sectors of 2 different jobs they've got. Each one, one is more political, one is more, let's say, in more holy. It's like Moshe and Aaron. Aaron and Moshe was like a king. So also these 2. Now let's go at the bottom. Let's see the 2 other vessels. One is the crown. Seats.
Seats, right.
Why is it not written on the top? I'll soon talk about that. I want to go first to the 8th one. The 8th one I said is the michnasayim. Why do they wear michnasayim? Because they wear trousers, because they have to be tznedik. They have to be, what did you say before?
Modest.
Modest, of course. You can't walk around without pants, without trousers. And have a look that it's written after the word lechavod uletifaret. That means this is the only clothing which is not exactly beautiful. It's not beautiful and it's not holy, and it's only for modesty, which is very important. By the way, these words that I bolded in red are written exactly in the same manner with one of the vessels. Can you tell me which vessel, which is not exactly holy, but it's got exactly the same thing of modesty or of cleanliness? I've already given you a hint. It's the kior.
Right.
Kior is not exactly holy, but the Kohanim can't start working and worshiping in the tabernacle without washing their hands and legs, by the way. They went bare feet, so they had to wash their feet. All these words are written exactly about that vessel. Bevu'am el oel moed begishtam, when they arrive to the tabernacle and they come to the mizbeach, they come to the altar, they have to wash their hands. Velo yamutu. Exactly the same words are written all in red. And I wrote here, if you want to look at chapter 30, verses 20 and 21. Chapter 30, verses 20 and 21 is written about the kior, which is like a sink. Perhaps there's a nicer word than a sink. What would you call it, a sink? There's another word, but it means when they wash their hands, the kior, and the same words are written there. So it's not for beauty, it's for cleanliness or for being modesty. So this is exactly lechavod. Now here I'm going to tell you a big chidush that I heard from one of the rabbis, and I think it's amazing. The word tzitz reminds you of tzitzit. Wow. The word tzitz is actually number 7. I would call it number 8. And here I want to say something which is unusual again. How many clothes are there in the Cohen Gadol? We talked about 8 clothes. What would be the appropriate number, actually? If you're talking about Elaine before, which number usually appears always? 7. So why the tzitz? You better listen to this, Elaine, because this is a chidush. It's a chidush. You found it? Chapter 30, verse 30, 21, 20 and 21, okay? But here's a chidush. The tzitz perhaps was invented or was written much later, not now. It probably at the beginning when the tabernacle was commanded, there were only 7 clothes. You didn't need the 8th cloth, and the 8th cloth is the tzitz. Why didn't you need the tzitz? This was invented or this was commanded after Korach. Why after Korach? Because there you've got the tzitzit, and there you've got also what's written on the tzitz. What's written on the tzitz?
Kodesh
LaHashem. Why is it written Kodesh LaHashem? What did Korach say? Korach was saying all the community is holy. Why do we need a Kohen Gadol? Why do we need you, Aaron? And why do you need more Moshe? And he was rebelling against these two. Comes a Kadosh Baruch Hu and takes 12 sticks, tells Moshe to put them inside the tabernacle in the Kodesh Kodeshim, take them out a day later, and what came out, which one blossomed and had almonds?
Almond blush, shkedim.
The shkedim, but came out tzitz, the word tzitz. But yet it's flower. And what is it exactly saying? Actually, it's saying a miracle. Yes, all Am Yisrael are holy, but even so, you need somebody more holy. Mm-hmm. The whole thing of Korach was rebelling and saying everybody's holy. So why do we need somebody more holy than Adam? You're right, but even so, you need leaders. You need leaders like Moshe. You need leaders like a Kohen Gadol. And exactly, he says, Kol ha'ida kulam kedushim. What's written exactly on top of his crown? Kodesh LaHashem. He's more holy than everybody else. It's the only pasuk in the Torah, and have a look here. Have a look in verse number 38. It starts with Shem Hashem and finishes with Shem Hashem. I wrote here, hey, because I didn't want to write a Shem Hashem, but how does verse number 38 start? Vehaya. What letters is Haya? It's exactly the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name. It's finishing exactly with the same word, Lifnei Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's the only verse in the Torah, I think also in the whole Tanakh, starts with Shem Hashem, finishes with God's name. Starts with
accidental, Rabbi.
Again.
Yeah, so what? I mean, don't become what's the word?
Mystical. You didn't like that, okay, Victor? You don't have to like that, but it fits very well with what's written. What's written in this pasuk. V'haya al metzach Aaron. It should be on his very clear on top of his forehead, and he should carry it. And what's written at the end of this verse? On his forehead, it'll be that he's the holiest. I think that's an interesting idea. One of the rabbis that I've heard from here, it could be that there should have been 7 clothings. But after they rebelled Korach, they added the 8th one to say, he's holy. Yes, everybody's holy, but he's holy more than anybody else. That's why it's written here at the bottom. So here you've got 2 clothing which are written at the bottom. One, because it's not so holy, the trousers, or the pants, and the second one is it probably is written at the bottom here because it's not exactly clothing. First of all, it's tachshit. How would you say tachshit in Hebrew? In English?
Jewelry, adornment.
Jewelry. Yeah. It's from gold. But another explanation is it could be commanded much later after Korach. Interesting. Right. So I wrote that It might be after Bamidbar, chapter 16, that Hashem was angry with Korach, and he says, okay, Aaron, put on your thing. Here I'm going to give you another interesting idea that I found here interesting. There are 12 stones here on the plate. Now, I only put here 4 colors. Why did I put 4 colors? Not because I didn't have enough colors, because the first 6 I colored in green. Soon I'll tell you why the first 6. Then I colored another 2, then I colored another 2, and then I colored another 2. Because all these 12 stones are exactly in the same order, ketoldotam. What's toldotam? How they were born from their mothers. That means the first 6 are exactly opposite. The first 6 tribes that come from Leah. Leah had 6 children: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zvulun. Okay, how do I know that Odem is exactly against Reuven? I won't explain now each one. The Midrash goes into details and says each tribe has its own color. Okay, I won't go into that. You can have a homework and you can go into the Midrashim and see which one, the first, second, third, and each one is exactly got his color. I wrote the first 6 in the same color, which is Kedeged against Leah. The next 2 are Zilpah, the next 2 are Bilhah, and the last 2 are from Rachel. Now, here it's important for me to say, the 11th stone is Shoham. You'll soon see why I'm emphasizing that. Shoham is always against Yosef. You'll soon see why I'm emphasizing. The last one is Yashfeh, which means beautiful. It comes from the Yafeh. Yashfeh is Binyamin. By the way, the Beit Mikdash was built in the part of Binyamin. He's the last son, and he's the let's say the most favorite, and there the Beit Mikdash was built. Why did I emphasize that the 11th one is Shoham? Actually, there are 2 more stones at the top. I talked about a few minutes ago that the plate has 12 stones, but I talked about also the apron has on the shoulders 2 stones. Here I'm reading at number 9. ולקחת 2 אבני שוהם. Who's Shoham? Shoham, I said, is number 11, is Yosef. Now have a look what's going on with Yosef. Yosef is resembling Shoham, and his stone, he has, like everybody else, 12 stones. He has a stone on the plate. No, he has additional 2 stones on his shoulders. 6 and 6. Does that remind you anything about Yosef? 6 and 6. When he was buried where?
Oh.
In Nablus, in Shechem. And then when they came into Eretz Israel, they had Har Grizim and Har Ival. 6 tribes were standing on Har Grizim, 6 on Har Ival. And it's exactly round the Shechem, exactly the town or the city of Yosef. So here you can see, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, that Yosef forever will always be an important issue from all the tribes. Yehuda will be important, Levi will be important, but I said already at the end of Parashat Vayechi, don't forget that Yosef is actually the continuation of Yaakov, and Yosef will carry on being an important issue because he's the middle of Eretz Israel, and he is standing in the middle, and his stone, he's got a 1 stone down here, but he's got another stone here, 2 small stones on the shoulders, and here it's written, Shisha mishmotam ala even achat, 6 are engraved on the left shoulder, and 6 are engraved on the right shoulder. But which stone is it exactly? The Shoham. Wow. So you can see even after Joseph being died already 400 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, still Yosef has got an important issue that he's as if he's carrying the 12 tribes of Israel. We'll carry on and seeing that. I won't talk about it, but also the vessels that were in the Beit HaMikdash, for instance, the Yam Shel Shlomo, there was a big, we talked about it last week, I mentioned it, that there was like a swimming pool. There was a big swimming pool. How many cows were holding the swimming pool? No, it's not real cows. There were the legs of the swimming pool is 12 and bulls. The bull is a symbol of who? Of Yosef. He's carrying the big 12 bulls are holding the swimming pool. So I won't go into that, but Yosef has got an important issue through the whole history. Of course, much later he's going to be Mashiach ben Yosef, and then the Mashiach Yehuda. But here you can see that definitely that this is exactly what's written here, that the 12 tribes are engraved specially on the two stones of Yosef, which is amazing, really amazing. I found that out. I was so happy with myself, and I wrote here what I wrote, that Yosef, especially the 11th son. Of course, the 11th son, because the 12th son is Binyamin, his brother, which was a younger brother. So Shoham, but here you've got two more stones of the Shoham. Okay. On the whole, there's a lot to talk about, but if you got anything to add, please, you can add. The clothing are amazing.
So I looked up this issue of the Michnasayim. So the commentaries say that Michnasayim are only known for priests, that only priests wore them. No one else in Israelite society wore them.
Interesting.
Because of the issue of tzniut.
Tzniut. When they go up on the altar. And they lift up their gowns, so and nothing will be revealed, and they're covered and so on. It doesn't mean that the rest of the people didn't wear that. They probably all had small pants and so on, but Michnasayim especially for the Kohanim. You're perfectly right. You're right. Okay. You're right. Okay. So that's interesting. Okay. If one more thing, so let's carry on, and I'll show you one more thing which is interesting also.
What is one more question? What is kefi tachra in pasuk 32?
32.
Ma'aseh oreg kefi tachra.
Like what do you call that thing that?
Engraved. It's engraved. That means I don't know exactly what it means, but it means that you don't tear it, but you open the me'il, the blue garment, and you open it and you sew it round it so it won't tear more. That means when you have a t-shirt, for instance, how does the t-shirt open more? Because round the where you put your head, there's it's an hem. You have a hem. Okay.
Right.
So tachara is lace.
It's lace. It could be lace. I mean, it's been sewn up. That way, it means being sewn up. Okay. So that's another thing. Okay. One more thing, if we're already talking about, is the garments which are the special things which are. Why is it written this order? Zahav, Tchelet, Argaman, Tulat, Shani, Veshesh. All these garments, of course, the gold is the most important. Tchelet is blue, or it might be velvet, some kind of velvet. It could be also turquoise. By the way, we know for many, many centuries later, kings from all over the world, that was the color of kings. You're not allowed to use that color because it only was suitable for kings. Whoever used that color was hanged or was killed because you're behaving like a king. So of course, in Alam Yisrael, you're allowed to use this color, but you know that the word tchelet is like blue or turquoise, and definitely it fits with the tabernacle and with the Kohanim. Argaman, Tolat, Shani, and Shesh, all these are garments which belong into all kinds of wool that has been engraved with different colors. Argaman, it could be purple, we're not so sure. Tolat, Shani is a reddish, and Shesh. Here I'm talking about Shesh. Now the Kohanim, not the Kohen Gadol. Where do they worship mainly? Not inside, but mainly outside on the outside altar. And we talked about it last week, that the important materials are inside. You don't have gold outside. You won't have gold outside ever. The gold is always inside the tabernacle. Where will you have silver? A tiny bit of silver outside, and mainly copper. Also, the Kohen Gadol, he's got the gold, he is inside. Who doesn't have gold is the rest of the Kohanim, his sons of Aaron Cohen. They have shesh. Shesh is like how do you call shesh? It's pishtan. I don't know how you say pishtan in English.
Oh, linen.
Linen. It's linen. But this linen was outside. By the way, the same linen was also on the garments which are surrounding the tabernacle. The tabernacle was surrounded with a border, and the border was with walls made from shesh. That means whoever's wearing shesh is outside. Who's ever wearing gold is inside. So the word shesh is always for what's written here. So here you can see at the bottom, I wrote here at the bottom, you can see that also the rest of the Kohanim, they are only wearing shesh. They're only wearing linen, which is garments, which is simple garments. Who else will wear this simple garment? You talked about it before, that David, when he was a king, even so, he was dancing with only linen. And his wife was angry with him. And he says to his wife, you don't understand. Before God, I'm equal like everybody else. And that's why I've been chosen and not Shaul. And before God, before the ark, he was dancing only with a t-shirt or only with jeans and not with a crown and so on. Only with bad and with thing. That's one thing. But also with the Kohen Gadol. On Yom Kippurim, when he goes inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, he only wears shesh, only linen. Why? Because in front of God, when he's going into the Kodesh HaKodashim, wow, there's no gold, there's no silver, there's nothing to be really feeling that you are more important than anybody else. You are representing Am Yisrael. Go down and be like a normal person. Even so, the Mishnah says those special garments were made in Egypt in special linen, which was only for kings. Even so. Okay, but it's only linen. It's special linen that was woven in Egypt and all kinds of things. The Mishnah talks about amazing linen that they found for the Kohen Gadol, because he's still not a normal person. So even if he's wearing linen, give him special linen. But you can see that linen always shows that is the simple thing. I'll only say it quietly. When people are buried, they're buried in white linen. Again, because before God, before they're going up to heaven, so be humble, be a normal thing. So that's amazing. So you can see that clothes have an important issue. Even before God, when you go inside, you're only linen. When you're going in front of people and all the congregation, gold and so on, like a king. Okay, if anybody wants to say anything, please.
Right. So when we learned the story of David in Shmuel Bet.
Well, Bet, chapter 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
The issue there, the way other people explain it, it's the issue of modesty, that he was wearing totally rock.
Tells his wife, I'm modest, and that's why I was chosen.
And he's jumping, and so
I always use the word t-shirt and jeans. Wow. So she's shouting out from the window.
Or he's wearing just an apron.
An apron, okay. So he put an apron on, but not much more than that. But of course, that's the greatness of David. And we're waiting for David to come and be the Mashiach. And even so, when he'll be a Mashiach, we'll be surprised. That's all you are? A simple person like you? Yes. Also, the Mashiach is going to be a simple person. He's specially not called a Melech, because already in Sefer Yechezkel is angry with the kings. They won't be called anymore Melachim. They'll be called Mashiach. They'll be called Nasi. Through the whole book, he's called a president. President only once it's written a king when he's angry with the kings. Okay. See you next week. Lihitrot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Lihitrot.